Mike Mayock, the great analyst for the NFL Network. By the way, a former safety for the New York Giants, joins us on the show. Mike, you made the internet explode with your latest mock draft. Your reason, now you really believe Johnny Manziel to the Cowboys?
What I really believe is the more I looked at these quarterbacks and looked at the top 8 picks in this draft, there are 5 significant quarterback needs in those top 8 teams. But more and more, my gut tells me that both Bortles and Manziel get through that top 8, through that gauntlet. And if they do, where do they land? And I think all hell is going to break loose tonight. And I'm not sure Dallas, all I know is if he gets on the board when Dallas is picking, I just think it's going to be the best moment in the history of the draft. Jerry Jones, that whole thing to me is intriguing. It really is. And I'm not sure where he's going to land or Bortles, but I do know, again, if they both, one or both makes it through the first 8 picks, it's going to be fun television tonight.
Mike, you're not a hyperbole guy, but you think that this, I mean, people's heads will explode if Manziel goes to the Cowboys because then, I mean, there's so many storylines if that happens. Jerry Jones and a new toy, Tony Romo, Manziel staying in Texas, his playing time there. Well, let's start at the top of the draft. You sold on Jadeveon Clowney, number 1, or Khalil Mack?
Well, I've got Khalil Mack as the number 1 player on my board, and I think he fits Houston perfectly. However, my gut tells me that Houston's probably going to go with the guy with the most upside in this draft, and that's Clowney.
Well, okay, so Khalil Mack doesn't have more upside?
I think Clowney's the most talented player in this draft. I think Mack's a notch below, but I think he's safer.
All right, then, Jacksonville's interesting and Cleveland interesting. What do you think that they do, and how does that affect the rest of the first round, or does it?
It certainly does, especially from a quarterback perspective. And you can make a strong case that Manziel or Bortles should go there. I would make the case that quarterbacks are a 50-50 proposition, and this is the best positional draft I've seen in years. And if you want to get panties in the seats, the best way to do that is to win games. So where Jacksonville and Cleveland go here, I think, is intriguing. They both have former defensive coordinators as head coaches. They both watched Seattle and San Francisco become the 2 best teams in the NFL by playing great defense. So I think those 2 picks are intriguing.
Well, it's a copycat league. And if you look at these teams that win, and I still believe you win championships with defense. You entertain during the regular season with offense. You win a championship because you have some defense. Do you see teams starting to build their teams defense first? Because all the rules favor the offense. So if I can get a great defense, I can neutralize a little bit of your offense. Is that where we're going here?
Yeah, I think the philosophy a few years ago was let's load up on offense. And Indianapolis kind of started this with Bill Polian and Peyton Manning. Let's just spend all our money on offense. We'll do what we have to on defense, but we're going to outscore people. And that philosophy, like you said, it's a copycat league, and that philosophy kind of took off. Now, all of a sudden, I think it's interesting and ironic that Seattle and San Francisco in the toughest division in football, they said, okay, you guys want to spread the field and get a lot smaller, and throw the football first. That's fine. We're going to load up with big, powerful, tough offensive linemen, fullbacks, tight ends, and we're going to pound it down your undersized defensive players. And they're winning football games and championships now. So I think it's heading in that direction. And from my perspective, Seattle's sitting there at 3, and their head coach is Gus Bradley, who just spent a bunch of time with Pete Carroll in Seattle. Yeah. So I think Khalil Mack's a perfect fit there. However, if they took a tackle, it wouldn't surprise me.
Well, I'm also that's a faceless franchise, and I've said for the last 7 months, 6 months, Johnny Manziel puts you on the map. Now all of a sudden you're relevant. Now people care. They'll watch a Jacksonville game. What about now? Let's do something now with the NFL and these teams, or you're building for the future, because I think Jacksonville has to decide. If you go Manziel, the blackout's going to be lifted. You got a fan base that's now excited. People are actually caring about your merchandise because you're seeing somebody that you actually care about instead of we're going to bring in Khalil Mack or Greg Robinson.
And you and I have had this conversation before. Everything with you is true. Everything you just said is true as long as that quarterback that you're picking to energize your team and that franchise becomes a great quarterback. That theory fizzles out in year 2 or 3 if the 50-50 bust rate goes the wrong way. Okay. And I guess because I'm a coach's son and I kind of believing in infrastructure and building a team, I would much rather, and I know David Caldwell and I know Gus pretty well, and I think they're committed to trying to build this thing the right way. And let's face it, Pete Carroll got that thing turned around in Seattle pretty quickly, and I acknowledge that even if you take Mack or Matthews or any of those people, at some point they still have to get that quarterback.
He's Mike Mayock from the NFL Network. They've got the draft. They got 16 draft war room cameras, including the Texans, Rams, Jaguars, as their coverage gets underway coming up tonight. If I said the players who will have the most impact on their teams, if I gave you first round or if I gave you rounds 2 and 3, what rounds do you think are going to have more of an impact on a team?
Even though the hit rate will be higher probably as far as good, solid players in years 2 and 3, I think this particular draft, because of the offensive playmakers, I think people like Watkins, Mike Evans at wide receiver are going to be immediate impacts. I think Ebron, the tight end, is going to have an immediate impact. I think Clowney and Mack as edge rushers are going to have immediate impacts. And then throughout the rest of that round, whether it's Aaron Donald as an inside edge rusher or Anthony Barr as an outside edge rusher, I think you're going to see impact. I love this draft, but I'll tell you, we've spent a lot of time saying how great this draft is, but a lot of defensive coordinators are like, you got to be kidding me. There's a paucity of defensive tackles. There aren't many edge rushers. There aren't many safeties. So there's a lot of defensive coordinators that would poke holes in that theory.
Before I let you go, the one name that he's going to surprise, whether how high he's taken or how low he's taken, is there somebody that stands out to you?
I think the guy that I've got sliding a little bit, and I think he's a great football player, and that's Aaron Donald from Pitt. And there are a lot of teams that don't like his lack of size, 286-pound defensive tackle. He reminds me of Geno Atkins from the Bengals, but if he doesn't go 14 to Chicago or 16 to Dallas, I think he could slide into the mid to late 20s, and he's too good a player to have that happen, but it could happen.
The best quarterback out of this draft will be 5 years from now.
Gun to my head, and it scares the hell out of me, but I'm going to say Johnny Manziel.
All right. Do you say that begrudgingly?
A little bit.
Under duress.
Both on and off the field. I'm scared about this kid.
Okay, Charlie Casserly was on with us earlier in the week, and he said, after talking to some of these front office people and GMs, that there are red flags off the field, and Charlie said he didn't want to get into it, but it was enough where he dropped him out of the first round. What does that mean to you when you hear that?
Charlie's a very thorough former general manager and a guy I really respect, and he's also fairly conservative. I've talked to enough people around the league where opinion is split on Johnny Manziel. There are some people, I've had a couple of head coaches look me right in the eye and say, Mike, I don't want to deal with that management issue for the next 5 years. I don't want him in my office every day where I have to say, why did you do that? So
what were those teams, Mike? Who were those teams that said that?
The Omaha Tomahawks.
An arena team?
I don't even know. I made it up.
Hey, have fun tonight as always, and good luck with this. All hell's going to break loose.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me on, Dan. I appreciate it.
That's Mike Mayock, the NFL Network.